I mean, I've seen a lot of General Assemblies and special sessions come and go. I know you have as well. What? How pleased are you with the legislature's ability to represent their constituents in this way? I mean, they really held strong here against a lot of political pressure to go ahead and pass this. And I think the House specifically, just from where I sit, the House was kind of the toughest, the strongest body, of the two in terms of pushing back, in terms of waiting, in terms of saying, hey, look, we want to do something different. We want to take care of the governor's security. We want to make sure she's secure, but we don't want to do this. How impressed were you with their resolve to be really an independent body?
Well, I think when you see the House time after time fail to, and from what I understand, a group of freshmen who refused to suspend the rules but the bottom line is they were hearing from the people. Not only were they getting from the governor that she was going to primary them and from what I heard, withhold the possibility of withholding funding to various causes, but they heard from the people. And when the people in essence revolted and said, we believe in our state's motto, then that's when the snowball effect started happening, because I talked to a lot of people before the session, and many of them were scared to that they were going to get on the blacklist. But you had a few who stood up and said, "This just isn't right. We believe in our right to know," and they took steps public steps and courageous steps to protect FOIA, even though they may pay a political price. And that's what was impressive. There were some I weren't impressed with at all, who I don't know what they think they were trying to conserve, but I wasn't impressed at all. And in fact, I won't mention names, but I was very disappointed in some of our legislators who call themselves conservatives, that they could get on board with this. And surprised that some that were very seasoned legislators would sign on to something, would become a sponsor before they even read the bill. And that's what I kept hearing over and over. Well, I really didn't know what I thought it was about security. I didn't know it was about this, and this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you in the room the night that the Senate committee? I guess they heard from so many people. So many people showed up to testify. You were one of the ones that testified against as well on that night, correct?
Well, depending on which night you're talking about, the first night we waited all day to testify, and Senator Hester came in and said that they still weren't in a position. This was 7 o'clock at night or so. Still weren't in a position to have a hearing on the bill. And the disappointing thing about that is that we have a FOIA task force, which in essence the sponsors of this bill thumb their nose at. And if we would have gone through that process and had that bill vetted, of course they knew what they were going to hear because it was so bad. But if this bill would have gone through, it had been transparent from the start, gone through the vetting process through the FOIA task force, folks who understand FOIA, understand how it's going to affect the people, and they disagree somewhat. I'm not for most task force, but
well, I was going to say, it kind of makes me think that, okay, well, if other task force in the past didn't come to the predetermined conclusion that the people in the higher ups wanted them to, then we would have just ignored them. Just like we. So tell our listeners, though, tell our watchers, our viewers, rather, about this task force. So how did this task force on freedom of information come to be?
Yep, that's an excellent question. And I think it was 2000. I want to say 17, but it was a legislative enactment. I mean, the legislature enacted it, and in essence, uh, each of the major each of the constitutional officers will have an appointment. So they can choose someone to be on the task force. Uh, this so it really it's really not just a rubber stamp at all. And you see very, like, you may see an appointment from a university. You may see a reporter as an appointment. Robert Steinbuck, who's the recognized FOIA expert, was on the task force. You might have a lawyer, like an excellent lawyer who's fought for FOIA, like John Toll. You may have someone who's a city attorney. So you can get a wide variety of perspectives. But for the sponsors, again, both in the general 2023 legislative session, when they rush these bills out 2 weeks before, 2 weeks or so, one would have gutted open meetings and the other would have gutted open records. The open records bill was rushed out right at the end, and really.
Well, and they also didn't they also try to tweak the open meetings law as well? I mean, this wasn't. I mean, I know they might have tried to do it earlier this year, but if memory serves, they've tried to do that in other legislative sessions and failed, right? Because there's this idea that, you know, the public officials claim that they can't ever talk about anything, without calling a meeting, and they're in violation of the meeting. They're saying that it's just basically too much of a burden or a high standard for them to meet it. But you're telling me that got shot down too, so the open meetings laws are intact, correct?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Our open meetings laws aren't anywhere close to being intact because the Supreme Court has in essence, really created a situation where they're looking at case by case. And we don't have a strong open meetings law in Arkansas, but we can have one. And if this constitutional amendment is drafted correctly. And to me, that's the big discussion right now. And the huge news is that as we speak, we are looking at a constitutional amendment in Arkansas to. We'll see, the devil's in the details, but what we can forever enshrine in our Constitution the strongest open meetings law and the strongest open records law in the country. And I've been working hard in that regard. I'm not on the drafting committee. The drafting committee is going to come out with their initial drafts shortly. I don't know if that's this week, next week. The people will get to comment, but the devil's in the details. But we have the ability, Paul, to create a very strong open records and open meeting law in Arkansas and put it in our Constitution.
Well, it certainly is interesting times for sure. Back to the task force, though, I just wanted to reiterate. So the task force on freedom of information, they were not for the proposed bill that failed. And so I want to make sure that is in fact the truth, right?
That is absolutely. They met again. This bill showed its ugly head on Friday before the session on Monday, and the task force met that morning. The sponsor of the bill did not show up. The task force stated in no uncertain terms that it was unanimously against this bill, and that it was and went a step further and said that it was bad for the people of Arkansas.
Wow. That's that normally, as you've pointed out, that doesn't really happen that much with task forces in the past. So here we are. I found that fascinating. So essentially, I mean, from what I can tell, I think we dodged a big bullet, right? I know you're probably not happy with exactly what eventually got passed, but it was certainly, in that the sausage making of legislating, certainly far superior. I mean, there's a lot of conservatives that kind of, took a victory lap because they were able to, only pass these changes in a limited way instead of these broad changes that would have really taken our rights away as citizens.
Make no mistake about it. It was a victory for the people, and the case could be made. Certainly, we all want security. To me, that's a limited exemption. I think it could have been drafted better. I think that it could have ensured that people like me who want to see how much a governor or anybody else, when they're using an airplane paid, a state-owned airplane, how much that's costing the taxpayers, how much, who's on that flight. I think we could have drafted a much better bill. But the bottom line is, it was a huge victory for the people that we got rid of the language we did. But we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, the ink hadn't dried on that bill before they were saying they were going to come back and run probably do it again, whether it's the attorney-client privilege exemption or the deliberative process exemption. And that's the reason that we've been forced to proceed with a constitutional amendment.
Okay, so the constitutional amendment is essentially a response to, hearing people say they're going to continue at this till they get what they want, essentially. So, I mean, so the battle is definitely not. There's one battle that's been fought and won, but the war over this is going to continue. That's what you're saying?
That's part of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this just didn't start with this special session. We had Representative Mary Bentley who brought an open meetings bill that said that 1/3 of our governing bodies can meet in secret and discuss and decide our business, our public business. So, do we want mass mandates or we don't want mass mandates? Whoever's governing body making that decision, 1/3 of them, if her bill would have passed, 1/3 of them would have been able to meet secretly and discuss and decide that. And guess what's going to happen next? One of those is going to meet with another group. And I mean, it wasn't a tweaking of open meetings that Representative Bentley brought. It was a gutting of open meetings. I mean, can you imagine if let's just say there's 12 quorum court members, 1/3 of them, 4 of them could have met secretly, then one could have met with another 3. I mean, it was
and what you're describing is a sinister manipulation of the law, but we have to assume. I mean, you have to assume that that's what politicians will do with it, because if they're given the legal authority to do something, they do it. That's just human nature, right? So yeah, I see your point. A third can meet, and then another third can meet, and eventually the whole group has made a decision without the public ever knowing about it. And so that certainly is the danger there. Attorney, I'll give you the last word. Go ahead.
Well, not only has the legislature proposed bills like that in terms of open meetings, but the Supreme Court has really done us no favors in that regard, either on a case-by-case basis. But I encourage folks to participate in the comment section of this constitutional amendment that's coming up. I think it could enshrine FOIA and make Arkansas an example of what the strongest example of open government is in the country. We have a great opportunity, or not. Again, it's going to be all in the drafting.
Joey McCutchen, thank you so much for coming on Conservative Arkansas Media. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.